What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Knives of the Round Table. My name is Marco, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Curtis F3. Now, the Curtis F3 comes in three different variants, in three different sizes. There's the compact, which is the one that we're going to be taking a look today. There's the medium, and there's a large one. I've reviewed the medium in the past, and I think it's one of the best knives I've ever had. I have it still. It's one that I declared one of the knives of the round table, one of the top 10 knives in my collection. Today we're going to be taking a look at the little brother, and this is the F3 compact. So I don't know if you can tell the F3, it's kind of hidden right there in the damasteel. So obviously this is the damasteel version. This is a damasteel version of the knife. He calls it a jigged titanium. So let me give you the tour of the knife. So this is a compact knife. So this is a small blade. You're coming in at 2.5-inch blade. This version is in damasteel. It's the compound grind version of the knife. They're coming up with slicer versions of the knife, and I don't know if the compacts have warranty. I've never seen a compact not warranty, but a sheep's foot. I know that they exist for the medium size version of the knife, but for the compact, I don't know if there's a sheep's foot version of the knife. So this one is a compound drop point here. You have the oversized pivot that is kind of very typical of Curtis knives, that kind of mimics his logo. Here you got the logo here. So what Curtis does, if you haven't seen my other video, this is called the spot pivot, and what it is it acts as the pivot and the over travel stop. There is a lock bar insert, but it's just an insert. The over travel stop, the stop for the lock bar, comes from the oversized pivot. You have kind of this, carved, or I don't know what you call this. Pocket clip of titanium, and it is a titanium frame lock on bearings. And so that's the tour of the knife. Like I said, so this is kind of flame anodized, jigged titanium. So this is what we have of the knife. Okay, so let me get started with some size comparisons here. Like I said, this is a compact version of the knife, so it's a smaller knife, but it is chunky. So as you can see, it's much smaller than even the Para 3, okay, in size-wise, I guess length-wise. You're still even smaller in sharpened blade length, but this one is actually a fairly chunky boy. So as you can see here, in thickness, it is much thicker than the Para 3. The scales are thicker, the blade is thicker. As you can see, the blade is thicker there. So it's kind of it's a short knife, it's a compact knife, but it is chunky. Here it is against the full-size bug out, and here it is against the mini bug out. So lengthwise, you're kind of looking in the neighborhood of the mini bug out, but they're just completely different feelings in the way they carry. I mean, this is just much more massive in every direction except length, right? So you can see it carries significantly taller, and it carries significantly fatter, if not longer. And then one of the things that gets criticized a lot of Curtis knives is this kind of oversized flipper tab. So for those of you, if you don't like a pocket pecker in your bag, not in your bag, in your pocket, then yeah, this is probably not gonna be the one for you. So let's get started, and let's get started with ergonomics. And the ergonomics, so I wear a large glove, and for me, in the regular position, it's a 3-finger knife. That my pinky ends up kind of landing in this area back here, but I don't feel like it locks it up as I felt in other knives. Other knives have like a little flat area here that I kind of feel that it locks the knife in place. This one's rounded towards the outside, so I don't feel, I mean, that's where my finger lands, but I don't feel that it helps the ergonomics. In a hammer grip, it is very uncomfortable, and the reason is that this pocket clip lands directly in the ball of my hand. Okay, in a saber grip right here. Now, when you choke up, for whatever reason, the knife ends up being where the pocket clip ends up in the hollow of my hand, and in this position, it's actually fairly comfortable. So I'm gonna call it a medium ergonomics. Okay, not the best and not the greatest. Oh, one size comparison that I forgot to give you is with the medium size. So that's the medium size version of the knife, and this is the compact version of the knife. And like I said, there's a larger version of the knife that is kind of a monster. Now, the ergonomics on the medium size one are outstanding. These are really good, and even in a saber grip, because the clip falls back a little bit, it kind of lands in the hollow of your hand. That's not the case with a compact one, at least not in my hands. Whenever I do a saber grip, I end up with a pocket clip here. I guess I can readjust, but then it's too small and it's not a comfortable position for me. I would say that it's fairly good when you're choked up here, okay, and the jimping that you have is very effective. Again, I think that the pocket clip is kind of hot spotty for this version of the knife, at least in my large hands. I'm not sure, people with smaller hands, if the pocket clip is gonna land better in your hands than they do in mine. But for people with large hands, don't expect this to be the most ergonomic knife that you've ever felt. It's far better when you're choked up. I would say that this one is fairly comfortable, but not when you're choked back over here. Now, you do have a very generous finger choil, so I think part of the intent might be that you're choked up over here. But if you decided you want to be back here, then it's not as comfortable as you would want it to be. Now, where this knife absolutely shines is where I think a lot of the Curtis knives shine, and that is in the deployment action. I think that the deployment action of a Curtis knife is the best deployment action that I've ever felt on a knife. When I did the review of the medium size one, I made the analogy that in the old X-Men comic books, whenever Wolverine would deploy his claws, right, there'd be like a snicked, right, that's the sound that his claws make, and that's what this one sounds like. Let me show you. Snicked, right? Here it goes again. The deployment action on these knives is outstanding. Now, the detent is really nicely done for deployment. Now, I cannot get them to drop shot. This one, the medium sized one, I have to kind of shake it in. It doesn't drop shut. It's pretty good, but not completely drop shutty. Now the compact one, the blade is too small. I have to really shake it down. So I would say that it feels incredibly smooth. It feels really premium, and the deployment is incredibly satisfying. It's crisp like no other knife that I've ever had. The deployment is better than my Koenig Aries. It's better than my Shirogorov. Is better than all of my Riots. All of the actions that I've felt, this is the best. Even I had the chance to play with a Holt haptic, and the deployment action on the Curtis is even better than that. So I would highly recommend that you get your hands on a Curtis knife just to feel the deployment action. I think that is just it is just outstanding. Um, even if the closing action is pretty darn good on the medium one, it's not so much on the small one. On the small one, you really have to just push it down, push it closed. So now let's talk about cutting. Now, for me, okay, this one is more of a special occasion knife. You know, it's kind of a little bit fancier on the titanium, and obviously the damasteel. So, and because it's a very compact size, this is not a knife that I'm looking for hard use, and because of that, I think that this is not an excellent cutter. The blade is too thick, you know, for something like this. Look, if I compare it to the blade of a bug out, it is probably about twice as thick as the blade of a bug out. Hopefully that's coming across here. So twice as thick as the blade of a bug out, and it's a very compact knife. It is a hollow grind, so it comes down to a reasonable edge, but man, it becomes thick pretty quickly. So this is, you know, your package opener, your very, very, very light use. Just because I don't think, you know, whenever you have a thick blade, it's because you're gonna need some robust use out of your knife, and typically that's not the case on such a small compact knife. Now these are built like tanks, okay? So for example, my medium size F3 I use a lot, and I feel like I can use it for hard use, probably even more than kind of what my Rick Hinder knives feel like. They're built like tanks, but I feel like the blade size for this is more conducive to using it as a hard use knife. It's very hard to think of a situation where you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to need my compact F3 to really put in some work. You know, that's probably not the case. I think, you know, if the cutting and hard use comes from the medium or the large size one, and that's where I could see a thicker blade making more sense. The thickness of the blade on this one is probably a little too thick for the size, and it's not an excellent cutter. It probably will cut things that you need for such a small knife, but I think they could have done you know, half as thick of a knife. So now we get into fit and finish, and fit and finish is just outstanding on Curtis knives, you know. And you know, Curtis knives, it's a full custom knife. In other words, Curtis built the full knife. Obviously he uses machines and everything like that, but he's the only one who touches the knife, okay? He doesn't have a production shop. In his words, it ain't no mid-tech. So in other words, there's not a portion of the knife that is not done by him. So there, you know, the medium one, or the regular version of the knife, he uses CTS XHP for his knives. It's about $650 to $700 or thereabouts, and for a custom knife, that's actually very, very good value. And I think that the fit and finish on his knives is really, really good, especially the action. The detent has been tuned to just be so crisp and so nice and so well done that the deployment is just something to write home about. Now, the size of the flipper tab, okay, that's the elephant in the room for a lot of people. A lot of people feel it feels like a bird, right? The eye and the beak. It doesn't bother me at all. You know, it's a design choice, and the choice makes this knife just a fidget monster. And you know, with all Curtis knives, because the deployment is so nice. And then you've got So these are two of the patterns, right? You've got a frag pattern, you've got this jigged titanium, and he's got a whole bunch of other patterns on top of, you know, having just plain titanium or smooth titanium. And then he's got all of these color anodizations, and then he's got some versions of them with damasteel. And I think that the damasteel, one of the advantages of having a thick blade is that you get this definition on the spine. Hopefully you can see that, and even on the flipper tab. Let me see if I can show you here. Yeah, hopefully that comes across right there. So you see the layers in every portion of the knife, and it's just really nice. It's just really nicely done. I think that the fit and finish on these knives is outstanding, and I think for a custom knife they represent very good value, right? Custom knives, like if you get a custom Rick Kinder knife, it's pushing $1,500, right? And most of the customs are kind of $1,500 and above. You don't get many custom knives that are sub $1,000 knives, and I think these are just excellently done. I think these represent very good value. I like them a lot. Now, one thing that I do want to say is that these two knives, both of them, represent the previous generation of Curtis knife. Now, the new version you will recognize, because instead of having the logo kind of lasered in like you see there of the F3, now it resides in a little pocket that he's done, and the pocket does two things. One is it provides a spidey flick location, so a lot of those knives can be spidey flicked, and he's done versions that are without the flipper. So for those of you who don't like the flipper and have shied away from the flipper tab because it's very large and it's very prominent, there are now those knives without the flipper tab. And in fact, he's done a slim version of the knife. Now, unfortunately, I think that the slim, I think I look at the specs. I haven't had one in hand, but I think that the slim just comes from making the scales slimmer. I believe that the blade is still what it is, which I think is probably a good idea in the medium and the large size, not in the compact version of the knife. The blade is a little bit too thick for such a small knife. Well, guys, I think I would recommend you trying out Curtis knives, and the reason for that is just the deployment action is just tremendous, and I think it's something. It's like experiencing the drop shot action of a Grimsmo Norseman, right? It's just something that I really believe that it is unique in a little bit in the knife industry, right? Guys, you know, hopefully this has been helpful to you. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and if you think that I earned it, then like and subscribe. Don't hit the bell, don't hit the notification button. Nobody likes to get emails about having to do things. You know where to find my content if you want to see it, and until I see you at the next one, take care.